Good afternoon again, good afternoon, and welcome to our third annual Juneteenth celebration in Denver. That's great. I'm Jitoshen Joko. I go by D, chairman of the Denver Human Rights and Inclusion Committee. There are some HRC members here. If you could please just wave, raise your hand so people know who you are. Thank you. These are the volunteers in the town who really strive to making our community welcoming and more inclusive. So thank you. We have a packed program, so thank you. Before I pass it on to the people that are actually going to talk to us about Juneteenth, let me take a minute to acknowledge some of our dignitary and elected officials here. The Chief of Police, Chief Level is here. Thank you, Chief. We do have a library trustee member, Judy Curtis. I saw her somewhere. Yes. We also have our assistant town manager, Jen Breaker, who is hiding behind here. You'll hear from her shortly. We also have our state representative, Sally Cairns, that you will hear from in a little bit. Our state senator, John Lovely, is here as well in the back there. And we also do have the Beverly. Oh yeah, Judy Curtis was just reminding me that we also have Gabe Lopes, who is our school committee member, that you will hear from shortly. He will have another introduction. We also have the Beverly High School JROTC, which is represented here. Thank you for being here. Thank you. And this year we are partnering with the the North Shore Juneteenth Associations. That is well represented here. That is helping us to put this event together. So thank you so much. Thank you. And we're also getting some help from one of our own. My son Anthony Joko, who is volunteering his time for the DJ here. Thanks, Anthony. So without further ado, let me pass it on to Helena Almonte, who is going to get us started with a poem. Helena.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Helena Almonte. Thank you for being here with me today. I'm going to be sharing a piece of poetry with you all today. Juneteenth is a commemoration of the day that Black Americans were first notified of their freedom. Yes, you hear me correctly. I say notified because that freedom was supposed to be granted 2 years prior. Today we are celebrating the freedom of a people so large and so full of life that we cannot be contained. We will not be shrunk down for comfortability, will not be watered down for your consumption, and cannot be erased from history, ever. And let us remind ourselves that no human being should ever have to ask for their freedom. And my hope is to see the day that that vision becomes true. And while we have been given our freedom, on American soil, it still remains conditional. So yes, celebrations are in order, but there's still work to be done. With that being said, since this is a celebration, I would like to gift my brothers and sisters with the reimagining of the Black diaspora. I have a vision for a world that is just and free. One where there are people dancing and shouting with pleasure. Yes. I imagine there will be a place where our people can gather freely without fear of retribution or being analyzed for anthropology. I envision a world where there is no anthropology, where the nature of that study is uncivilized and unnecessary, for the world is already ours. This is a place that is lined to the brim with greenery and trees, a forest that has not been touched by the fatal hands of colonialism. This forest is rich and dense like the texture of our hair, Tangled branches twisting towards one another, growing into each other, creating a bond that travels root deep. The networks beneath our feet functioning as vias of communication, pulsating with raw energy taken directly from the source. We walk barefoot in the dirt, our digits dexterous, the way that nature intended. We are one with the planet now, one with one another. Genetic memory wiped clean from our database. Here we only know the sweet scents coming from bouts of honeysuckle and dandelions lining our path. We know misty dewdrops on leaf petals gathered in the early hours of dawn. We are familiar with peace and with freedom. We will have lived it for 400 years prior. We will experience it inherently, never to ask for our freedom ever again. Freedom will grow on trees as a native fruit, swelled with juice, eager to be plucked and be bit into, be it the sweet juice running down our chins. Let its pulp stick between our teeth as we smile at one another. We will dance freely under moonlit skies filled with stars, our aspirations sitting amongst them. We are free now. Free in every sense of the word, free with no chance of being apprehended. Here we all speak the same language, and our tongues will sit comfortably in our mouths. There will be no need for our lips to contort into odd shapes to speak a language that was forced and unforgiving. Our form of speech will be ours entirely. There will be no splicing of words to accommodate outsiders. Our artifacts will remain in the land in which they were created. They will adorn our homes. Lining our walls are decorations handmade by artisans, handcrafted by tradition. Everything we use will be taken from the soil, and when we finished, it will be returned to the earth. And here, the soil is forgiving because it recognizes us as its children. And our ancestors will be with us here too, living in harmony and partnership with the soil, ensuring that their descendants may live in enrichment and prosperity. And prosperous we will be, as we always have been. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will now invite our next speaker, Kashan Little, from the North Shore Juneteenth Association.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Well, today I made a quick visit to Salem, so they brought a lot of energy, so I need to check the energy room in here. So when I said, can I proceed? I want to hear yes, indeed. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
Y'all might outdo Salem. Okay. My name is Kayshawn Little. I am from New London, North Carolina. I work as a licensed social worker for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Children and Family. At the end of 2019, I was hired as a foster parent recruiter for the department that covers the greater Lynn area. I am also a member of the North Shore Juneteenth Association under the leadership of the first Black woman to be council member in Lynn, Madam President Nicole McCain. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
So, about November 2017, I made an 18-hour drive from North Carolina, Georgia, to Gloucester, Massachusetts, to be an adolescent social worker in the Salem area office. So when I come to Salem, Danvers, all over the North Shore, it's very personal to me. One day, on my way from Beverly, I was driving to Salem to head to the courthouse because I had a case to deal with one of my adolescent youth. As I was heading from Beverly to Salem, I was being followed by the police officer, which, not realizing, being from North Carolina, my tags are a little different. So as the officer was following me, as I got to Washington Street in Salem, everyone know Washington Street, right? Yeah, that street, I don't like it either. There was a family that walked in the walk path as I stopped and allowed the family to walk by. And there was another family that was farther away that did not enter the walk path, so I proceeded. As I proceeded, the officer, he tried to run me off the road because he thought that I was trying to get away. In reality, I was just trying to make sure that we're not stuck in traffic as he pulled me over. When I got pulled over, the officer, he started yelling and screaming at me, and I was just trying to again process that, hey, I was just trying to just get over, and so we can do what we have to do. I explained to him that I am a licensed social worker, that I'm on my way to the courthouse, and not realizing that it wasn't until that I expressed to him that I was a licensed social worker and I'm on my way to the courthouse that the officer let me go. As a licensed social worker, even within the department, as I am advocating for our children who come into foster care system, a lot of times my passion perceives as aggression. And where my passion turns into aggression, I get called to the principal office, and then they put me in the place called insubordination. While I have seen a lot of my white counterparts where they can be loud and obnoxious, and people can say, oh, that's just them. Whereas I have to stay in my lane and take my energy and my passion to somewhere else. Can I proceed? As a licensed social worker and being part of the department, my goal has always been to be able to maintain a sense of identity, community, and purpose for our children who grow up into the foster care system. But I want people to remember this. When George Floyd was killed and murdered a few years back, the first thing they didn't think about was not that the fact that he was killed and murdered. The first thing they thought about was, what did he do that was wrong? It should not matter of what did a person done that was wrong, or if they have credentials to be treated less than human. So at the end of the day, I want you to make sure to remember that we need to treat each other as human beings. And we need to humanize people, not dehumanize them, as our history has over the period of years. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
When I hear the words free slaves, I hear an oxymoron. Sold to the colonists almost 404 years ago in August 1619, when the first record Africans arrived in Virginia. The years of identity slavery that followed define the DNA of the country that will be formed here. Millions of years of history, identity, culture, and community have been lost as the results of millions of Africans dying at sea during the Middle Passage in the slave trade pandemic. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
242 years ago, the greatest American of all time, I'm hoping that the schools are talking about this American, worked as a double agent to George Washington to secure the victory at the Battle of Yorktown in 1781. James Armstead Lafayette was not even free, even after the war, that was fighting for freedom from the crown. Can you imagine fighting for freedom and still not being able to be free? Can you imagine enlisting in the military, the Navy, the Army, the Marines, and coming back home? Imagine that you still don't have the freedom to go across the street in another neighborhood that's a block away from you. Can you imagine that? Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
James Armstead returned to a life as a slave until 1787. Actually, I'm going to have to backtrack real quick because I want to make sure that y'all catch this part as well. 161 years ago, on April 16, 1862, the District of Columbia confiscated Emancipation Act became law. Pause for a minute. consider how much compensation would have been offered to the people who suffered torture and other human rights abuse, and whose labor and families were stolen for generations? The answer is zero. The federal government compensated the owners of enslaved people for their loss of property. The people who were free were not compensated nor given any assistance for the transition of freedom. Again, can you imagine that when you hear the government says that we don't have enough money to meet the needs of the people, but turn around paying the owners who own people, they compensate them for the loss of property? Can you imagine being represented as property and not human beings? Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
160 years ago, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are henceforth shall be free. It declared forever free for more than 3.5 million slaves in the Confederate areas still in the rebellion against the Union. Another oxymoron, forever free. When the Emancipation Proclamation was declared, there was 4 states that was bordering the Confederate states that was still practicing slavery. There's a timeline of a relentless struggle, 400 years of slavery, 101 years of segregation, and unceasing years of oppression and so-called freedom. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
We are here today, thank you, Leonard, man. We are here today to celebrate not only the freedom of Black Americans, but Black Americans themselves. Juneteenth is a time to take a look at the complex experience that we have lived through, the realization that we have lived and continue to thrive. It is imperative for us that the world acknowledge who we are, deny education, deny housing, deny life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yet here we are, still becoming scientists, engineers, politicians, social workers, graduated from various educational institutions. Here we are, navigating systematic oppression the best way we can to have culture, community, and purpose. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
One of the goals of the North Shore Juneteenth Association is to educate community about what Juneteenth is important and why we celebrate this holiday. 158 years ago, following General Granger's Juneteenth arrival in Galveston, Texas in 1865 to inform 250,000 enslaved people that slavery as they knew it was over, and to tell them to go back to their owners and wait. Many continued to work for their masters because they had no idea what their newfound freedom and lack of sense of identity or community. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
The holiday commemorates the 2-year delay of enslaved Black men and women and children in Galveston, Texas, experienced before being notified of their freedom. When the Emancipation Proclamation was declared on January 1st, 1863, many slave owners were making sure that their free slaves were not hearing about their freedom and was sending them deep down in the South to Texas to continue with slavery. Many people heard the proclamation, but they were not executing the proclamation. General Gordon Granger, along with the Union Army soldiers of color, rode to Galveston, Texas to announce the General Order 3, which states, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive Office of the United States, all slaves are free." Another oxymoron. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between the former masters and slaves, and the connections henceforth existing between them becomes between an employer and a hired labor. The free men are advised to remain quietly at their presenting homes and work for wages that are formed, that they will not be allowed to collect a military post, and they will not be supported in idols elsewhere, or therefore. Imagine hearing of your freedom and being able to own that. Knowing that as a person you have been set free from the early mornings and the late nights of hard labor. Or that your body is all of a sudden yours. That no one has the right to force themselves on you. That news is cause for a celebration. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
However, the General Order contained a message of freedom, but also contained a message of entrapment. Would Black Americans be supportive in their lawful right to be free? Juneteenth has always been celebrated around June 19th in various parts of the United States since 1867. Juneteenth 1865 was the beginning for what is next for Black Americans' identity, culture, and community. The day was recognized as a federal holiday on June 17, 2021. President Joseph Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act into law. Little known fact, what people may know, after Juneteenth celebration that started all the way back in 1865, slavery was still continuing in two other states, in Kentucky and Delaware, until December 1865. So, why Juneteenth? Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
Juneteenth is important because it holds on to the message of freedom and hope. The day symbolized the idea of slavery in America to be over. The star on the flag represents freedom for African Americans in all 50 states. Freedom and hope is what the enslaved Black men and women held on to. They knew they were free, and the first step was all that matters. The full staircase was of no consequence. They were ready to take it one step at a time. Look how far we have climbed. We continue to climb. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
The verse that surrounds the flag, the star on the flag, symbolizes the new beginning for Blacks in America, a commitment to identity, culture, and community. The arc symbolizes a new horizon, the opportunities and promise that lays ahead for Black Americans. Even though I don't feel free yet, I feel the power, our strength, our resilience, our intelligence, and beauty, just as the world does. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
Although the blood and sweat and tears of my ancestors are proof of debt unpaid, the red, white, and blue symbolize that Blacks are Americans. As Americans, we pay into this corporation or institution, if you will, because it's lawful to do so. Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
Can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
Today, in the spirit of Juneteenth, we want to foster unity in our commitment of the work ahead. With unity, it shows our power, our strength, our resilience, our intelligence and beauty, and how we maintain our identity, culture, and community. Let us celebrate how far we have come, but never lose sight of how far we have to go. North Shore Juneteenth Association will wish you all a happy Juneteenth. I would like to recognize a few members. I think April, she's here. Where's she at? Way right here. We have some few members of the North Shore Juneteenth that's here. Give them a hand clap, please. Give them a hand clap. And I also want each and every one of you to find your way to engage. And the best way you can find your way to engage is support organizations that's out here that's continuing with the fight. Like, you can become a foster parent in Denver if you live in Denver. Yes, become a foster parent. Help support our children who are in care. Or you can, again, support the North Shore Juneteenth Association. Follow us on North Shore NS Juneteenth on social media. Or go to our website, www.nsjuneteenth.com, and support our mission by donating your time and treasure and talent. Thank you, and may God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Prashad. Thank you. That's great. Thank you. I will now call on our state representative, Sally Carrot, to issue some greetings from the State House and the State Senate. I know John is back there.
Good afternoon to everyone. You are a beautiful sight here on the lawn of Town Hall on Juneteenth. I see my colleague Senator Lovely is in the house along with all of you. Thank you, Dee. Thank you, North Shore Juneteenth Association, for making possible the celebrations of this day across the North Shore, and in so doing, educating all of us and helping our efforts to acknowledge the painful history of slavery and to celebrate the Black community. Thank you to Jasmine and Jen Breaker and the DPW crew, and of course, Danvers Police Department for working on this holiday and last Sunday. Thank you to all of you for being here. I do want to give a special note of thanks to my former friends, well, still my friends, former colleagues on the Committee for Diversity, which was the forerunner to the current Committee on Human Rights and Inclusion. I was on that committee for 7 years, and my own journey along the path of understanding what it is to be Black in America, in Massachusetts, in Danvers, continues. I will never fully know that experience, but the conversations we had in that committee, sometimes painful, helped me to understand better. I recall one time we invited Beverly Morgan Welch to come and speak to us and share some of her insights as the executive director of the Museum of African American History. And a small audience had gathered in the middle school, and we were talking about teaching young people history. And Beverly Morgan Welch told us most of slavery is X-rated. So that's a hard truth, and it poses a challenge to every one of our efforts to reckon with history and to connect the dots from the past to the present. And that, in part, is what makes the work of the North Shore Juneteenth Association so valuable. So, again, thank you. As Abraham Lincoln said, we cannot escape history. And as Governor Maura Healey said last Wednesday at the Embrace Ideas Boston event, the start of Juneteenth weekend, if we don't know our history, we can't build our future. The event was held a few yards from the Embrace sculpture by Amari Jeffries. If you haven't yet seen it, I hope you go and visit. It is majestic and moving, a bronze rendition of Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King as they hold each other in an embrace, and it is beautiful. And two remarkable legislators I have the privilege to know and work with addressed the crowd that day. In the words of State Senator Liz Miranda, only the fourth African American elected to the Massachusetts State Senate and the first Black woman elected, Juneteenth reminds us of the strength and resilience of the Black community in the face of oppression. We must continue to honor and uplift contributions of Black people in our communities and work to dismantle the systemic racism and inequities that have been embedded across our Commonwealth and our country. And we cannot rest until every person is free from racism, free from violent policies and practices across our state. As the senator said, we must deal with present-day realities of mass incarceration, the obscene racial disparity of maternal health outcomes between Black and white women, something our own Senator Lovely has worked on doggedly, and the lasting damage of the racial wealth gap and other relics of racism. So LaToya Edwards, one of my heroes, introduced my friend and legislative classmate, Representative Brandy Fluker Oakley, from the 12th Suffolk District. And her family has roots in Alabama. Now, Brandy is many things: third grade teacher, lawyer, sorority sister, daughter of Brenda Fluker, relentlessly positive, and a leader. And here's what she said. She got up, she did a little dance. She said, as I sat and listened just now, fanning myself in the heat, it was pretty hot on Wednesday, I had a sobering moment. And she talked about how one time when she lived in New Orleans, she naively stepped out of her nice air-conditioned apartment onto the balcony and realized how scorching hot it was. Tilling our lands, caring for other people's children when they could not care for their own, sometimes sold into slavery, making this country what it is through their blood, sweat, and tears. So today is very much about that struggle. And I think the answer to the question, how did they do it? As Kashan talked about, it's community. It's the wholeness of the Black community, despite such brokenness, that was sustaining, and which we celebrate today. So, lost one page of it. Well, whatever. It is really stunning to think about somebody enduring the trauma and the violence of slavery for 1 minute more than is legal, never mind 2 years. And so it is incredible to think about the fact that people didn't know. They didn't know that Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation. They didn't know of their freedom. And then the general and the regiment of Union soldiers showed up in Galveston, and then they knew. So today, I want us to heed the words of my colleagues, my heroes in the legislature, Senator Miranda and Representative Fluker Oakley, and uplift the contributions of the Black community over 385 years, over 400 years in our country. And as Brandy said, to love each other, to be tender with each other, to embrace a little longer, and to celebrate the other purpose of today, and that is Black joy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, State Representative Sally. Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Jen Baker, Assistant Town Manager, who's going to give us some greetings from the town.
Is this one on? Yes. Okay, sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the Select Board and the Town Manager, I would like to welcome you all here today. Today we're here to highlight the importance of the Juneteenth holiday, marking the emancipation of enslaved African Americans. I want to share our gratitude as well to the resources of North Shore Juneteenth Association and the HRIC for all the work, and Jasmine Ramon as well for putting on today's event. Early celebrations dating back to 1866 were often church-centered and revolved around food festivals, and sometimes included public readings of the Emancipation Proclamation. And since then, every U.S. state and the Districts of Columbia have formally recognized the holiday in some way. President Biden declared the day a federal holiday in 2021, the first new federal holiday since Martin Luther King Jr. Day was adopted in 1983. This long-buried holiday is particularly important in our local communities during these often difficult times as we acknowledge the ongoing battle for racial equity and reaffirm our commitment to ensuring our Black community feels welcome, heard, and supported and celebrated. Again, on behalf of the Select Board and the Town Manager, thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much, Jen. I will now call on Tanya Cowell to come and lead us into the Black National Anthem.
Squad, attend, hut!
Testing? Okay. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing victory sound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, chastening this chastening rod, felt as the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers died. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's amazing. Thank you. Please, let's give her another round. Thank you. I'll now call on our school committee, Gabe Lopes, school committee member Gabe Lopes, to lead us into the Juneteenth proclamation that was unanimously adopted and signed by the select board, the Denver select board on June 6th. So, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Dee, for the honor to do this, and it's a real pleasure to stand here today. Just to share a few brief words for myself personally. I mean, Juneteenth is really all about justice delayed, and it's about the recognition of, despite proclamations, despite laws that have been passed, justice for African Americans across the country is a continuous delay. And another thing I'll say is, and I'll say this bluntly, is try to stay off social media. There's a lot of haters out there. Even within our own community, 4 or 5 people on social media, their intention was to either ignore this, invalidate it, or not let it happen. But you're all here, and I see that this is going to get bigger and bigger every single year, and we will be here to celebrate. So let's definitely keep that in mind. Danvers Juneteenth proclamation. Whereas the town of Danvers is a community that is working together to be more equitable, inclusive, and just community. And whereas the town of Danvers is made up of people who come from all over the earth, and whereas in Danvers, we believe that freedom and justice for all are essential cornerstones of a civil, healthy, and just society. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates and celebrates the end of slavery in the United States of America as the proclamation reached the last remaining enslaved African Americans in the Confederacy. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates June 19, 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger led Union soldiers into Galveston, Texas, to announce that the Civil War had ended and that the Emancipation Proclamation had declared all enslaved people free nearly 2.5 years earlier. And whereas Major General Gordon Granger said, the people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. I'll let that go. and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. And whereas Juneteenth commemorates and celebrates African American freedom, education, and achievement, and whereas Juneteenth is a time for community reflection, self-reflection, and planning for a better future, and whereas Juneteenth is a day in many communities across the country marked with celebrations, guest speakers, picnics, and gatherings of friends and family. And whereas the town of Danvers acknowledges that the history of our town and the United States of America is plagued by racism and commits itself as a community to the principles of equity, inclusion, and the work of actively disrupting systemic and institutional racism to create the free and just society we all want to live in. Now, therefore, let it be proclaimed that the 19th of June will be a day to commemorate Juneteenth in the town of Danvers, and urge all members of the community to rededicate themselves to furthering the promise of equity, freedom, inclusion, and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Gabe. I will now call on to Jasmine Ramon, who is the Director of Equity and Inclusion for the town of Danvers, to lead us into the end of the program.
Thank you all so much. I'm the lady running around with all of the different proclamations celebrating Blackness here in Danvers, so I apologize. I want to take a moment and ask you all to look around at your neighbors, those who live here, who work here, who are visiting, and take a moment to really celebrate the joy of the beautiful racial diversity that exists here in Danvers, whether or not people like to acknowledge it. We are here, and this is the same thing I said last year, we are here. I really just want to again thank the North Shore Juneteenth Association. This is the third time now I'm seeing them gather this week, and I don't take lightly the labor that you are putting into this on a day that is meant to be celebrating your history. You're here in a predominantly white town on a day you would have otherwise had off to join us, and you came from events today, you're going to more this week, so thank you so much for that labor. Thank you for the joy that you brought and the energy you brought here today. So I'll keep it brief. Again, I just want to acknowledge the energy that went into this event beyond our partners, the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, the town people who are here, and again, just this is our third annual event here, but each year it gets bigger, it gets stronger, it's not going anywhere, and that brings me a lot of pride and joy to see. It's a wonderful time to bring the community together. It's a wonderful time to celebrate the possibilities and to pursue that vision that our poet shared with us earlier today, to continue the path forward and really to uplift the words of Jen Breaker again, to make sure that our Black residents here in Danvers feel seen, affirmed, celebrated, uplifted every day, every way, shape, or form, through words and small interactions to policy from bottom to top and back and forth. So thank you all so much. Take time to learn and introduce yourself to someone new here today. Grab some snacks. Enjoy some tunes from our recent graduate, Anthony Joko. And we look forward to seeing you at the next round of events that the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee puts on for you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jasmine. Thank you. And a shout out to Greg Dolan and DCAT for filming and broadcasting this event. And Josephine O'Brien, thank you. Thank you very much. And this concludes our programs. Please get some water, get some snacks here. And happy Juneteenth, everyone. Thank you.